Known as the rainbird in certain tribal communities, the southern ground-hornbill was previously distributed all the way up the east coast of Africa as far as Kenya. These birds live in savanna habitats. Sadly, it has disappeared from 70% of its original range in South Africa. It is estimated that there are no more than 1,500 of these birds left in the South African wild. Approximately 700 can be found in the Kruger National Park. Groups consist of 2 to 8 birds, made up of one alpha breeding female and an alpha male, plus male helpers. The southern ground-hornbill is the largest of the hornbill species and the largest cooperative breeding bird in the world, and as such is of great interest to scientists. Each group requires a territory of approximately 100 square kilometers. The sexes look similar, but once they are fully mature, the males develop all red facial skin, while the females have a patch of violet blue below the bill. Until about 2 years of age, the skin will be a cream color. It then becomes mottled with red and blue dots up to the age of approximately 4 years, before it finally turns red. It is believed that the females will only reach sexual maturity somewhere between 8 and 10 years, whilst it is thought that the males reach sexual maturity at about 7 to 8 years. They nest in a variety of large trees above the ground or in cavities in rock faces. Their nests are lined with grass and then covered with broad-leafed vegetation and are surprisingly clean at all times. On average, only one chick is raised to adulthood every 9 years. Harvesting of second chicks for hand-rearing now takes place in the Kruger National Park as part of a conservation initiative. Over the past 50 years, ground-hornbills have declined on a national level. This is a result of habitat loss, farming, secondary poisoning, trapping and snaring, the exotic bird trade, and as a result of ancient tribal customs. Fortunately, in 1999 at Mabula Lodge in the northern Limpopo area, the Ground-Hornbill Research and Conservation Project was started by Anne Turner.
I went to Umgeni River Bird Park 11 years ago and saw my first ground-hornbill at the bird show there, and I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Basically, what we do here at the show is education about conservation using a combination of indigenous and exotic birds to teach and educate people about the beauty around us and also the importance of conserving what we have. One of the best things we've ever had happen with our show is the Southern Ground-Hornbill Breeding Project, which started because of the original star of our show, a southern ground-hornbill called Marilyn. We had a lady called Anne Turner who came watch a show just started, fell in love with Marilyn and his whole story.
And I came back to Mabula and said, why don't we have ground-hornbills here? And they said, we should have, but they're extinct in the whole of this northern Limpopo area. And if I wanted to know more about it, to ring Alan Kemp, who was the world authority. So I rang Alan Kemp, who said that he, by chance, had got 3 juveniles that he'd taken from the Kruger as second chicks, which always die in the nest. And they had been hand-reared at Pretoria Zoo, and he didn't know how to release them into the wild because he'd done a release previously which hadn't worked. And he was here within a few days and looked at Mabula and decided that it was perfect habitat for ground-hornbills. And about 10 days later, 3 ground-hornbills aged 4 months old arrived. Now I thought that they would just be thrown out onto the reserve and we would go and admire them and check on them. But no, it wasn't like that at all, because ground-hornbills live for 60 years and they are juveniles and unable to look after themselves for about 2.5 years. And these chicks were 4 months old. So we got a shepherd who lived with them and stayed with them and fed them because they couldn't feed themselves, and protected them from predators because this is a Big 5 reserve. And this went on for 2.5 years when we were given a wild male, an adult wild male. His whole group had been poisoned and he'd been rehabilitated at Maholahola and given to us. And he transformed the whole concept of release, because he took these birds under his wing and protected them. He showed them how to forage. He showed them how to live in what is a very complicated social structure. And so he then looked after our released birds, our released babies, but we were having huge trouble hand-rearing. Hand-rearing baby ground-hornbills, they're the size of a duck's egg when they're born, and they grow to knee height in 4 months, so they need a huge amount of food. They're carnivores, so they need food which we couldn't feed them. We couldn't feed them with abdomens of grasshoppers, and we couldn't feed them with bits of snake and frogs because they just became impacted and died. We think that the female produces some sort of liquid that helps the baby to digest, which we didn't have. So we then decided we must have a captive breeding program, and Umgeni had 2 adults of breeding age, just of breeding age, and this was in about 2004.
At the time, the 2 adult pairs at Umgeni River Bird Park in KwaZulu-Natal had never bred in captivity before. And to our knowledge, nowhere in Africa had the southern ground-hornbills ever been bred in captivity. Nest boxes were set up at Umgeni and placed approximately 5 meters above the ground. Fortunately, the birds took to the nests and started to breed. As soon as the eggs were laid, they were removed and placed into incubators where the temperature was kept at 37.5 degrees. The good news was that the Umgeni Bird Park has some of the best equipment and trained staff to support this pioneering project.
I'm involved with the hand raising and the incubation of birds. The first thing we do is check that all our units are sterilized, ready for eggs to come in during the breeding season. The incubation temperature is set and the humidity is set. The eggs are then, when they arrive, washed and placed onto the rolling system. They're placed into the units where they're put onto rollers. And then left in there to incubate. They are weighed daily to check that they have the correct amount of weight loss, and they are also just if they're not losing enough weight, we have to check the humidity is correct, check the temperature is correct, and still there's a problem, then we may actually have to file down some of the eggs.
Similar to what happens in the wild, the rollers will gently turn the eggs regularly. These are 2 southern ground-hornbill eggs which are about to hatch. The internal pipping process starts at 36 days and will hatch at 40 days. Now let's look at the egg on the light box.
The chick is internal pipped. There's the chick there, that darkened area down the bottom. This area here is the body of the chick. He's moving quite actively. You can actually see some movement. What will happen now, he'll actually external pip, but this area here isn't a pip mark, it's actually a damage from a stone which we varnished over. He'll external pip and he'll rest for 24 hours and then start getting on with the work.
It will take the chick approximately 24 hours to free itself from the shell. And here it is at 1 day old. At this very delicate stage, the chick needs to be fed every 2 hours for approximately 3 weeks. Sue Ann and her specialist team will work around the clock to ensure that it survives. When the bird is not in its brooder, it will be kept under an infrared lamp to keep its body temperature warm. It will be kept in this small plastic tub with a dishcloth around the sides so that it doesn't bump its somewhat unsteady head against anything hard. Its cord needs to be disinfected with betadine cream, and its vent needs to be washed twice a day and rubbed with Vaseline to ensure that no bacteria or infection can threaten its life. And its pink skin will turn to a deep purple in a couple of days. The bird will be fed a lukewarm liquid combination. The bird will be weighed. The liquid food will be fed using a syringe. And every detail will be recorded. This is what Sue Ann has to say about the work she is doing.
It's nice to see the birds going back out. That's like, for me, is a big plus. You know, it's not just, you know, the birds being bred for being bred. They've been bred for a reason. They've been bred to go back out, back into the wild.
Once all the eggs have hatched and the young chicks have stabilized at approximately 3 to 9 days, the 1,200-kilometer journey to Mabula Game Reserve will be done.
Thank you, Charles. So, Kwakwa, should we go over the dam wall?
Let Anne tell us some of their early experiences with hand-rearing the young chicks.
Hand rearing, it was very, very difficult. They're very difficult chicks to rear. They impact very easily, and San Diego Zoo offered us one of their best hand rearers and flew her over, and she was with us for 3 months. Her name was Donna Sweet, and she hand rears condors for the Bornean condor release. And she went back after 3 months and handed in her notice and rang us and said, "I'm coming back." And I thought San Diego would never speak to us again. Luckily, they understood. Well, if they didn't understand, they were very nice about it. They've supported us ever since. But Donna came back for another 1.5 years, and she never lost a chick. She was just amazing.
Once the young chicks arrive at Mabula, they will be kept in a special research nursery for a further 30 days, where they will initially be fed 2 hourly during the day and eventually fledge at 86 days. You will notice that the windows on the outside of the thatched roof nursery have all been covered with shade cloth. This is because adult ground-hornbills have a nasty habit of looking at themselves in the reflection of the glass and then breaking it. The shade cloth ensures that the curious free-roaming ground-hornbills in the area will not break the glass when they hear the call of the young chicks inside the nursery. Anne Turner's highly dedicated team will now assist her with the responsibilities of rearing the chicks to maturity. Hand-rearing specialists from all over the world will also join the team during the very busy breeding season, which lasts from August to January every year. This is some Ringer's lactate, which is added to the food to give it additional moisture. Here is Christine Gianon, who was sent all the way from SeaWorld in Orlando, America, to help hand-rear and learn firsthand in Africa how to care for young southern ground-hornbills. You will notice that no talking takes place inside the nursery, and that she only makes the sounds of the parent bird. This is to ensure that the chick does not associate a human voice with food. The slits of the bird's eyes will begin to open at approximately 8 days. It is believed they can see moving shadows well before they open their eyes fully at 30 days. An upside-down feather duster is still used on the smaller chick to give it some motherly warmth and comfort. This is Dee Duval, who has been working with Anne for the past 5 years. She is using a ghost outfit plus a small puppet glove that looks a bit like a southern ground-hornbill. As the chick grows older, so Dee starts to use the larger puppet that is more realistic. This puppet, kindly made and donated by San Diego Zoo in the US, allows for larger chunks of food to be kept in its bill when feeding the bigger chicks. As you can imagine, August to January is a very demanding time for Ann Turner and her team, with all the young chicks to take care of. Dee Duval explains.
I'm in with the hand rearing, but at about 5:30 in the morning, we take the food out. The food needs to heat up to room temperature because you can't feed birds cold food. So we heat up the food. The first feed starts at 6 o'clock. Feed all 3 birds. We also weigh them in the morning and clean them off, which basically just means we wipe their bums clean of any of the feces that was in the bowls in the night, and we change their nests over. Food preparation, all that food that you saw in the little bowls, we have to actually prepare. So we have fresh chicken, fresh ostrich, and we cut it into bite sizes. Now that depends quite largely on how big the bird is. Like that little one you would have seen, the food is a little bit smaller. So as the bird grows, the food items actually get bigger and bigger. Then our next feed is at 10, same procedure all over again, feeding. Next feed at the moment is at 2, and then another one at 6 o'clock in the evening.
We asked Dee what she actually feeds the young chicks.
Okay, the food in the actual bowls is a mixture of different kinds of meats. What we're trying at the moment is to be as a greater variety as we can. Kind of simulating nature where they would have had a lot of different things, mice, grasshoppers, a bit of snake. So we're feeding them ostrich, we're feeding them chicken. The chicken we get is free range, that are hormone and antibiotic free chicken. So you don't want to put any kind of junk into them. We also feed them game meat, like kudu, because things like beef, the fat in beef is really difficult for them to digest, the actual fattiness of that. We also feed them pinkies or fuzzies, again depending on the bird's size. So pinkies would be for really small birds, fuzzies for the bigger ones, also for them to get their fur in. And then we're giving them a bit of papaya and a bit of grape. Grape is great, it's high in iron and sugar, and the papaya is a natural probiotic, so it puts in all the good stuff, helps with their digestion. Then the first liquid we put on is just Ringer's lactate, same things you would get in hospital, just high in minerals and vitamins. And then we're giving them water. At the moment we're giving them bottled water. Spring water is just a bit better. Even though we have borehole water, our water could be funny, a little bit high in fluoride or something else, so we give them bottled water afterwards, just kind of to wash it down. And also because the food is not as in nature as fresh, where it would have a lot of blood, a lot of juices, you actually need to add liquid to the food that we're feeding them.
We also asked Dee about the volunteers that come from all over the world to help during the breeding season.
All the volunteers that we get, especially during hand rear season, are hand rearers from other zoos. So it's kind of a bit of a cross training. They teach me things and I teach them things. It was so interesting, the beginning of this season, Christine said to me, be really careful when you're hand reared. You have to offer food from both sides so that the bird's bill doesn't get damaged on the one side and it doesn't just big to the one side. So it's little things like that where every hand rearer just teaches you something different. You're like, I should have thought of that.
Eventually, when the chicks are approximately 40 days old, they will spend time in this outdoor boma. This allows them the opportunity to acclimatize to the outdoors and experience sounds of the wild. You will also notice that the chicks are now kept in bigger tubs. Finally, they will be kept in these nest logs so that they know what to expect in the real world before they embark on their critical walk to freedom. During their time in this boma, the wild ground hornbills will have the chance to make visual contact with the captive youngsters. This is a period where socialization takes place on a controlled basis. Anne and her dedicated team can also assess if there is any aggression displayed between the wild birds and the maturing captive youngsters. Feeding the birds in the large boma once they have fledged also follows a strict regime so that the birds never associate man with food.
Charles is going to blow a whistle before he feeds, and this is so that they associate a whistle with food, and it's a specific whistle. And if they've flown off somewhere to a house or something, we don't want them to be there, we blow the whistle and they come back. It's a management tool.
Once Anne and her team believe that the young birds will be accepted by the wild birds, they will all have transmitters attached to them before they are finally released to the wild.
So to make sure that they're all together, we'll get a signal off all of them. But who are you on now, Charles? Kingfisher.
Anne Turner's vision would never have become a reality without the support of her founding sponsors.
Of course, without our sponsors, that we wouldn't have a project, because projects cost not a huge amount of money, but they do cost. And WWF and Nedbank have been with us for 10 years, and Sassel for 5 years, and it's all ongoing sponsorship. But of course, with projects like this, in order to grow and to enlarge the research, which is vital, we always need more sponsors.
Anne has harnessed the very best knowledge from both the wild as well as captive breeding programs to try and help save the species from possible extinction.
So the captive breeding program is up and running. It's going extremely well, and of course is of extreme importance, because should anything happen to the high density of groups in the Kruger National Park, which is really the only place in South Africa that they're doing well, should anything happen to them, should Newcastle's disease go through or avian flu go through and kill the birds in the high density areas like Kruger, there would be no more ground-hornbills unless we had them in captivity, and unless we have a release program here where we know how to release them back into the wild.
Currently, the first adult male, affectionately known as Storm, who was rehabilitated from the wild and took such good care of the first 3 youngsters released at Mabula 9 years ago, plus Kingfisher, who was a second chick harvested from the Kruger National Park 8 years ago, have proven to be outstanding foster parents. The 2 adult birds, Storm and Kingfisher, have adopted all 3 of these youngsters that were captive bred at Umgeni River Bird Park. Both Umvulu and Nkosi are 2 years old and are still receiving a lot of life skills from their foster parents. Their juvenile skin color around the neck is still cream-colored. Skills such as pecking ticks off a live warthog or enjoying a sand bath are all taught to them by their foster parents. The eldest youngster, Thor, who is 3 years old, is still colouring up, and here you can see his mottled skin colouring as he matures. You can also see the transmitter on his back. Depending on the terrain, the signal can sometimes be picked up from as far as 20 kilometers away, and its battery life will last approximately 2 years.
The name ground-hornbill is a bit of a misnomer, and the fact that you very seldom see a ground-hornbill fly. They fly low through the trees. They don't fly high in the sky, so it's very seldom that they're seen. But they roost high in big trees every night, and their nests are in huge trees with a huge open cavity that is made for them. They're not like yellow-billed hornbills and other hornbills in that they mud themselves in and rear their chicks in safety and then break out. Ground-hornbills don't do that. We decided a few years ago that one of the problems with ground-hornbills decline is that the habitat is altered. Big trees have been cut down for use by people, for fires and for building. and there were few nests left. So we put up 30 artificial nests in the Timbavati and Klasiri, where there was a high density of ground-hornbills, but we thought they probably didn't have enough nests, and within 9 months 9 nests were being used.
Meanwhile, back at Mabula, approximately 200 meters away from the research campsite, Anne and her team erected an artificial nest box that could facilitate a camera to record the first documented nesting of a southern ground hornbill. Fortunately, after 9 years of patiently waiting, the 2 adult alpha ground hornbills, Storm and Kingfisher, are finally showing signs that they may wish to breed for the first time.
Storm, who's the adult male, is now taking a huge bunch of leaves, which may have food in it as well, the odd grasshopper, back to the nest to give to Kingfisher, who's waiting for him. And he puts an extra lining of leaves on the nest all day.
The nest box with a camera can be seen in the far background tree.
You can see on our laptops in the office. And the important thing is to have this branch in front of the hole, because they then land on the branch with food for the female and then hop in and drop it in. But with a bit of luck, you'll get a shot of that. You see, her head is here, and that's the top of her head, and her bill, she's looking out of the nest, waiting for Storm to come in, and he'll fly up and land on a branch out here, and you'll see his head come in, and he'll drop food in, and then he'll pick it up and break it up and give it to her. He's got more in his mouth. He'll come in again. You see his whole head is in now, and he's picking up bits on the floor that he dropped just now, and he's picking them up and giving them to her. And she's got her wings open, and she's panting a bit. I think she's very hot in there. It's a very hot day. It's very exciting.
How many years has this taken, Anne?
9 years. Yeah, you have to have a lot of patience. They have a lot of patience. But what I want to see is an egg. That is when I shall go wild. It will be the first Kruger-born chick that we hand-reared here and has been free roaming in the wild that has bred. So it's very important for a conservation project to have a chick from the beginning that's been hand-reared that actually goes on to breed. That's the importance of it.
Kingfisher laid her first egg on the 18th of October 2008, and it hatched 38 days later on the 24th of November. For threatened species to have any chance of future survival, it is important for man to harness and manage the best available knowledge from both the wild as well as captive breeding programs.